welcome to my little chat, my fireside chat.
Thanks, Michael.
I wanted to talk to you about your lab, Lactobacillus. Uh,
Yeah,
Back in 2019, I found your website and I actually communicated with you back then in October. I went through all my emails and to see what, from the time you were in Spain or Portugal with those feral pigs.
that was actually here in Australia. But what I did was I completed well, my partner Carolyn completed a poster of the project, and the project was basically about trying to give Indigenous people control of the local ecology, give
Okay.
it back to them. And the idea was if we could, we were Australia, as you know, is pretty vast. In Cape York, where we were going to process the pigs,
Hmm.
was a place called Cowan, which is about 7.5 hours north of the nearest agriculture on the Atherton tableland. But we worked out if we could get that product in IBCs down to those farmers and sell it for around $4 a litre, it would have meant we could sell, we could pay the person who shot the pig $1 a kilo.
Okay.
So it would have meant 50 kilo pig on country, very important for Indigenous people in Australia, as it is in lots of places, for them to stay on the country where they were born. So the idea was to actually create employment for them on country, and that was the focus. Along with, we've got something in the Arakoon wetlands alone in North Queensland. We've got something like 4 million pigs,
Oh,
but that's not unusual. We've got 7 million donkeys in the middle of Australia. Camels are getting out of control. We've got billions of rabbits, billions of foxes. The British did a real job on Australia when they imported various things.
yes. Yeah, they did. Um, Tell me what for the farmers, why the lab is so important to them.
Well, for a number of reasons. I honestly believe, I honestly believe if we treat it the right way and keep in mind that agronomy is still a fairly important thing, as is mineralisation of the soils in general. But I think we can actually totally get rid of chemical fertiliser by using hydrolysis as a process, um, because it's adaptable to almost any type of well, it is adaptable to any type of protein source you can actually access. So it means when you make an amendment from a particular protein source from a crop or whatever, you can put that amendment back over the same crop, and you're actually feeding the amino acids back to the plants that they're going to use to actually grow into the plants they are, if you know what I mean.
Yes.
I started with Lactobacillus. I got into a I got into a dispute with a person who was working with me when I was in government, making compost, and this person was very litigious. um, my wife basically wrote to him and told him he was an arsehole, and he sued her for defamation. Anyway, for lots of different reasons, I could no longer use his formula for composting or for lactate. So I had to find something original that I could use. And the recipes for lactobacillus are quite numerous on the web. Most of them are based around grains, capture using grains to capture lactobacillus from the atmosphere into water, and then transferring that water into something with a fat level in it, like milk, to
Mhm.
actually get a cheese and then the separation of the serum underneath. The very interesting thing recently, we've been trying to, when we originally started on the process of hydrolysis for the pigs, we were actually leaving we're actually leaving the fermentation material under a fermentation lock for 4 weeks to
Okay.
ensure that we actually got a proper kill off of all the pathogens. We've since found that we can actually create that drop in pH in as little as 4 days, given the right sort of conditions. The reason why we originally used 4 weeks was the model that we got from Kansas State University from research that they did on pigs.
Okay.
Um, so that was the United States Biosecurity Group that were actually conducting that research. So the research person we used here, Dr. Sarah Beavis from the Australian National University, she decided to use the same thing so she had something to back up the ideas of what we were talking about. But it's become an imperative now. More recently, I did some work for a company that's using food waste as a feed supply for black soldier fly larvae.
Okay, yeah.
So they're growing maggots. Yeah, it's quite an ordinary thing these days. The problem that they had was their wastewater, um, they were spraying out onto farmland. Now, I don't know how it's happened, but we've imported numbers of people from the United Kingdom um, into the environmental protection authorities in Australia. Um, as you know, mad cow disease was a big thing in the UK. And so those people bring, with this shit in their heads, they bring this stuff into legislation in Australia. And now there's a general paranoia among EPA people in Australia about BSE. Having said that, um, the EPA people looking at these people's wastewater, they said, well, if you can put that through hydrolysis and get it below the correct pH, then we'll accept it as a product for spraying onto agriculture. So I ran a test for them using 5 different containers of product, one of which had molasses at a rate of about 10%. So for hydrolysis, as you know, you need a protein source, a carbohydrate source, which I think now my understanding of that might be changing a bit, and I'll try to explain later. But a protein source, a carbohydrate source in solution with lactobacillus. Now, those three things should pull apart any protein back into amino acids and peptides. And you, as the farmer, then have got control over that sort of mid space in the production of food between where the sun is being converted into energy, is being converted into plants, and then proteins are at the bottom of that chain. But you're playing with that mid bit, so you've got huge amount of control over how you apply it, where you apply it, what rate you apply it at, etc. Anyway, we found when I got the balance right, I could actually drive that product that those people had, which had started off with a pH of 6.4, I could get it down to 4.3 in 4 days. So
Yeah.
that's a revolution for them because it means if they've got, say, a 20,000 litre tank and they've got 20 something sites in different parts of Australia, if they've got a 20,000 litre tank that's used for that product, um, they can hold that product in that tank for a full week and then process it while it's being held there. If they have a second tank beside it, they can be filling that one up while the first one's processing and then just rotate them. So a simple solution for something where if they'd followed the normal regulations, about the only way that they could have treated that water was to put it through a sewage system.
Yeah.
So that would have probably cost them 60 cents a litre, maybe more. Um, and they were producing more than 30,000 litres of that stuff a month. So it's a big bill for business. So we've gone from having this huge liability to having a product that's not only safe to use, but is arguably a foliar fertilizer because they can take the residual protein that's actually in their waste stream, dead maggots at a rate of about 5%. If they use a macerator pump to pump it into the tank, they can macerate that protein, add molasses through something like just a really simple trickle feed system, um, and that whole product is completed in 4 or 5 days. So yeah.
Wow. Now, that's really interesting. The lab itself, when it's applied to the soil or to the plant, what does it do for that plant or for that soil?
Oh, look, that's a phenomenal agronomic question. It's very, very hard to say, but what you're talking about is overall health. Having said that, at the same time, there's a general rule in herbal medicine where people say, if you're trying to treat something, don't do it more than 3 months at a time. Give the body a break to go. And that's probably a wise move. whether it's in lawn care or in agricultural farming,
Yeah.
you need some sort of space for nature to sort of recover a balance. But generally speaking, lactobacillus is the stuff that the stuff that we're capturing from the atmosphere, we're constantly breathing in.
Yes.
And look, there are lots of people who will say to you, why don't you just use kefir as a lactobacillus source?
Hmm.
It's a really concentrated lactobacillus source. My response to that is when I capture lactobacillus from the atmosphere using rice water or a grain water, um, I've got no idea of what I'm capturing. I don't know what's in the atmosphere. There could be a myriad different types of biology you're actually capturing. And my whole argument is that the broader you can make the biological base, if you can make the biological base in a composting system as broad as you possibly can, nature will pull apart anything it's built. So, and also too, if you're using the spice composting process, which is based on lactobacillus, you have no methane production. You don't have to turn it. You use less water than you normally do. You have a much higher quality product. It's just got so many things going for it. That's one of the great frustrations I face all the time is most of the people I deal with, I think I'm just talking bullshit when I say you can have a methane-free compost process because they've not seen it, I don't think.
Yes. No.
Um,
And then
anyway,
yes.
coming back to the lactobacillus, just recently, because of this need to speed up that process, we're also dealing with the need to have very large quantities of the solution available at any one time. So I've been trying to work out how you can shorten the process. Like any grain at all will actually attract lactobacillus or will attract the mix to the water, whether that's corn, maize, or just common grass seeds, um, eucalyptus seeds I've used. Anything will attract that stuff into water. More interestingly than that, again, to speed up the process, I thought, oh shit, well, if you're just capturing this stuff in water and then putting it into milk, milk is a very large percentage of milk is water. Why don't we just throw the grain straight into milk and see what happens? And then I'd heard a story about a young fellow here in Australia who at the start of the Second World War was sent by his parents over there as a child to stay with his grandparents in Italy, and they had a dairy farm. And he talked about watching his grandfather, whenever he had calves, he'd put some milk aside and throw some rice into it and wait for it to go all slushy and mushy before he fed it to the calves. And that's how he kept them healthy.
Yes.
Um, and so, what I just said, the idea of I've got a bucket out the back at the moment, just take a large bucket of milk and throw a grain into it. And rolled oats will work just as well as anything else. We're having really, really bad heat waves at the moment, on and off. Um, a couple of days ago, it was 40 degrees Celsius here. I don't know what that is. Canadians use
Yes. We're
Celsius, don't
Celsius.
you?
Yeah, we're Celsius.
Yeah.
It's hot.
Yeah. Not like those neighbours, the
It's
pesky neighbours.
120
Um,
Fahrenheit.
yeah, yeah. So it's awfully hot, but that gives you the ability to produce that stuff really quickly because the warmer it is, the faster it turns. And so it virtually turned overnight.
Okay.
So now I've got a big lump of cheese that and about that much milk, that much clear serum underneath it. So it's super fast. Asking what it does, look, I've heard most peculiar stories from different people. I've heard one fella using lactobacillus, just the lab-based serum, as a pour-on for cattle.
Yes.
He claimed something like a 20% increase in growth over a 12-month period. I
Okay.
mean, if that's true, it's phenomenal.
Yeah.
Um, but also too, there's a group in Vermont in America led by a gentleman, Abe Collins. I've got that. I'll send that to you if I think.
Sure. Appreciate it.
Sorry.
It's okay.
He's some time ago. They asked me, and they're lovely people, but peculiar in the American sense that they didn't want to talk to me unless they had a contract. Um,
Okay.
and I said, I mean, I'm sure I've got business insurance, but I mean, your chances of suing me for anything from that distance are anyway. But anyway, God love them. They agreed to the contract. Um, but what we started to do after a while, they were using lactobacillus in all sorts of different applications. They started to use the spice inoculant. That's the extended inoculant that we use in composting. They started to use that as a seed coat and as a overall general foliar spray.
Yeah.
And there was a photograph that one of them sent me of radishes that I use in a presentation, where from the tip of the roots to the top of the plant after 14 days was something like 8 inches.
Oh,
It was huge. It was
yeah.
sort of that long. But also too, then we started experimenting. I suggested to him that I'd found some research that somebody was doing with chickens. And I suggested to Abe Collins that if it kept birds healthy enough, what would the effect of the spice inoculant be on avian flu as a preventative, not as a cure?
Yeah.
It's not a cure at all. Nothing's a bloody cure or anything. Um, but they had some stunning results with chickens. Normally where they were growing eggs, they're mainly egg focused, they would go from 80% egg production in a normal week down to as little as 50% during winter. And along with that winter, they'd also get, because we don't, I mean, cold is completely different here compared to what you've got, but that they'd also get at 50% egg production, they'd also get a 10% in mortalities. Since they started spraying this stuff, misting it into their chicken sheds, they maintained egg production at 80% and they had no mortalities.
That's really
Now
good.
that's a fantastic statistic in the sense that, and it also, interestingly, it will increase the nutrient efficiency of the birds by as much as 1%, which is not very much when you're small time, but if you're feeding 100,000 birds, that's going to be a huge amount of money every year.
Yeah.
Um, So to answer your question in broadest possible terms, when you spray lactobacillus onto plants, it goes into the plant via the plant stomata and the intercellular structures. But the most important thing you'll find in any of those biostimulants, and you'd probably be more familiar with this than I, is the abiotic stress factors. So it will tolerate more cold, it'll tolerate more heat, more wind, more
Yeah.
drought. We've had instances here where, and we have some really shit conditions when it gets dry. Like at the moment, it hasn't rained. Well, we had 2 millimeters of rain probably in the last 6 weeks or 2 months.
Mhm.
Um, it gets very, very dry. But if you're using a biostimulant like lactobacillus, it will probably give you a month's grace.
Mhm.
Like from the time that everybody else's crop dies and your crop dies will be another 4 weeks, which gives you another window of opportunity to actually pick up some more rain. Um, so the abiotic stress factors, there's a if you put the name Collar, Colla,
Yep.
into the net, Collar et al. There's a paper on the use of biostimulants in horticulture, the use of protein biostimulants in horticulture. Um, And there's another fella called Klopper, Klopper. And he's got a collection of literature on the use of, with a group of other people, on the use of biostimulants in agriculture. And that's really informative. The collar one really stresses the abiotic stress factors because that's a huge. I mean, I don't have any apart from environmental science, I don't have any qualifications in this area. So everything I do, I've learnt by trial and error. And there's been quite a few errors as well. Um, Not many
And our
though.
success.
It's a very forgiving process.
Yeah. No, I'm the
Sorry.
same as I'm no, no, I'm the same as you. It's all by trial and error. I take on everybody else's errors and then we try them and we figure it out. Like when you started mentioning the lab serum to me back in 2019, I went ahead with it. And we've got about 6 months in our winter from November to April. So that's a huge rest period. I just checked our soil temperatures underneath 12 inches of snow. So the full ruler is our depth right now of snow. And we were at 27 Fahrenheit, which is for some reason I was doing Fahrenheit because I was um, someone in the U.S. was doing it, and I sent it back to them. Turning it backwards
Yeah.
into Celsius is minus what, 10, something like that. But
Yeah.
what it's getting at was the soil was very active. We pulled the core, we looked underneath the microscope, everything was very active, and that's where I figure my rest period would have been for the lack of the lab. And
Yeah.
plus, I'm just like everyone else. I'm a guy. I get lazy during the summer. I might not put
Yeah.
the lab in say the actually I wouldn't put the lab in September. I would put it on more for October, but I would do my April, my May, which is my spring. I would hit June, getting it ready for the summer heat, and then sometime July and August I might forget to put it in just because of I'm a guy. I just forget.
Yeah.
I got so much on the
Yeah.
go. And then in 2022, when I was chatting with you, I started putting in perennial ryegrass mix into my rice. And then you just emailed me recently with the fact that you were doing something similar to that back then with native grasses in Cape York. I just looked up my emails.
Yeah.
But what I'm going to do is I was talking to Green Cover Seed, and they've got a mix of 10 different families. And so I was going to put the 10 different families thinking on the Christine Jones type of theory where I'm going to try and pull all of the, say, the lactobacillus out or the in the fight, putting them in with the
Yeah.
rice, letting them go for your 4 or 5 days, then, cultivating it up. What do you think on something like that?
That makes sense to me. If you're I know of biodynamic farmers who I've spoken to about this process. They'll always say that if you use the grain type,
Mm-hmm.
if you're making any soil amendment and you make a grain, you use the grain type that you're trying to grow the thing from. That's the best way to go because you're introducing things that crop's going to be familiar with. Can you hang on just a sec? I
Yeah,
just want to
go
get a
ahead.
book title. I don't know.
Yep.
I don't know where this person is located. I need to check it. But
Okay.
it's just Garden Amendments, Nigel Palmer.
Yeah.
That's very informative, and it says a lot of those sorts of things as well.
I'll have to get that book.
So, a regenerative grower's guide to garden amendments. Yeah, I don't know where he is. I mean, it's all sorts of. I've read through it, and it's just it's more a reference book than a. I don't know I don't know where he's based. The forewords by John Kemp.
Yeah, I saw that at the bottom there.
Yeah. Um. Anyway, don't know where it's printed. I'll have a look.
I can look online. I'll look it online and I'll get her. The one thing I was thinking though is if I could put almost like what Christine had mentioned with the amount of families going out there with the species, if almost we put it in with the lab, cultivate it up, and allow, like you say, nature to pick and choose when I put it on which one will survive. As if I
Yeah.
cover cropped an acre with it, I'm just trying to cheat the system a bit and leapfrog it quicker with the lactobacillus and the seed in there. And like you said, we were doing it with a friend of ours over here, Camden Grains, with the corn, and then others with the wheat. They didn't really do a full study. I know it would work. The percentage of how it would work, you just have to have faith when you put it on.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
and then other than that, no, and then I'm working with the farmers here, the dairy especially. We have a quota system where they kind of dump milk. And I was mentioning to them, let's take that dump milk and make a lactobacillus, which they are now. And then now they're putting their own
Yeah.
grain with the rice and cultivating it up.
Right. Do they produce slurries? I've got farmers in places like Ireland using lactobacillus straight into their slurry.
Okay, yes.
And I'm just doing an experiment at the moment on some paunch waste from an abattoir.
Mhm.
I did a bit of stuff for a woman called Weeby Volkman in Namibia
Okay.
several years ago, where she got tiny farmers, tiny by scale. I mean, a lot of women farmers.
Yep.
Something like 70% of the farmers in the world are subsistence farmers, and 70% of that 70% are women, and
Okay.
they're operating on an acre. So
Yep.
and these people are really, really poor. So where Weeby asked me if it was possible to use fresh cow manure um, as an input into hydrolysis. And the interesting thing about all guts, if you were God or Mother Nature or whoever put this bloody crazy system together, if you're producing feces in any type, it has to be edible for something.
Yes.
Otherwise, we'd be all up over our heads and shit all around the world. So, but the inefficiencies, the relative inefficiencies of a cow gut, of the four gut system, mean that you've got both protein and carbohydrate in the manure. All you have to do is put that into a slightly more solution, add lactobacillus, and boom, boom,
Yep.
you've got a foliar fertilizer. And that means that those women have got a foliar fertilizer that's appropriate to their land, but it's as cheap as chips. They
Yep.
don't have to pay anyone for anything. So
Yeah.
that's the real advantage. So I'm using paunch waste for the same thing, because paunch waste has only gone through, it's only from the rumen, so it's had another, I think another one or two guts to go before it comes out the back end of the cow. But it means you've got access to a lot more protein and carbohydrate.
I understand what you mean by the slurry now. They did. The two gentlemen I talked to a lot up that way, I did a video, and in the video he recorded last year, he put his slurry out on the field, and the
Yeah,
neighbor said to him, without him, like to his wife, without him knowing yet, that it didn't smell as caustic as it did the season before. And he had been
yeah,
putting his product on. So it actually is, as you say, doing the job of putting the taking away the smell,
yeah,
processing it. Yeah. But
yes,
that's what I
yeah,
was really wanted to talk to you about was the incorporation of other seeds in the mix, giving farmers viability of what they've got on hand with your lab or up to your spice. I'm going to put the websites down so they can find your recipes, the 1, 2, and 3. Like I was mentioning to them, we're using it at 1 to 100, 1 to 200. So for every gallon, I'm putting a gallon of my lab in. Uh,
yeah,
and then I'm again, it's coming down to faith. We've got in lawn care one of the worst situations or scenarios for the fact that when they build or construct a home, we've got the highest compaction ratings at the surface at 300 psi plus,
yeah,
and they tend to put dirt on top, which is just from the pile over there that they pushed off to the side. That's been growing weeds, so it's oxidizing. The EH, pH is all crazy, and they put it back, and then they bring sod in from the field that has had Roundup on it. And along the short, I feel that we've got one of the worst, and this is what this will help me prove. But more so, I just want the farmers out there knowing that there's different ways of making it. I know there's KNF, there's all these, Chris Trump, all these guys out there that are doing it. I just like to keep drilling it down and keeping it simply simpler. The KISS roll, just keep it simple, where I don't have too many recipes. I just like yours to me are the basics and the simplest, and we just keep drilling it down, and we got the best of the best.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
And you're looking very healthy, by the way.
Yeah, well, thank you. Yeah, I had a full PET scan, and they haven't got back to me with any horrible results. I'll see the oncologist next week. So
Oh,
yeah,
you look
but
like you're full of life. You got a lot of humor still.
yeah. Well, also too. Um, I think I've probably told you my wife died nearly 2 years ago now, so it's
Yes.
been very quiet around the house.
Okay.
But so we were doing this work for a long time together,
Yeah.
and
Wow.
so I'm still doing it. Like I've got this job in Samoa, where we're doing composting with originally with village women composting compostable nappies, because diapers, they don't have access to energy or water on a regular basis. You can't give them washable nappies. So the idea was to actually capture the feces and the urine as an asset. I had a lot of trouble trying to keep bloody people using the recipe for making the compost is idiotically simple, but it relies on the heat and using a thing called a Maybruce box, which is just a square box that holds about a meter or 1.2 meters of potential compost. You have to get the box full fairly quickly. Otherwise, if you do it really slowly, you're dissipating all your heat all the time. That's all.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, but I keep saying to the said to them a few times. There was a company in Australia many years ago called Cabot's, and they used to sell a floor varnish. On top of the tin, written in very big letters, was "When all else fails, follow the instructions." But anyway,
Yeah.
since then we've started another composting thing with a church group over there, and these women they're very impressive. They run the whole village, and
Yeah.
they just say, "You go and do such and such," and you do it with. And so we've just been using food waste because we didn't have food waste the first time because all the outside villages out there, the larger towns, they all use their food waste to feed pigs and chooks
Yeah.
and so chickens. And so where these people are getting all their food waste, and so we'd put in about that much green waste and then that much food waste and fill
Yeah.
the box up. We had one box it held above 62 degrees for 8 weeks.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, phenomenal temperature. And you don't get ignition because in the composting process, because you've got so much biology, you have such a huge respiration rate.
Yeah.
It's too wet to burn. It's too wet to ignite. So
Yeah.
we after Cyclone Yasi in Queensland in 2011, we had piles that were 15 meters high without covers. And I'd prefer to use the cover with a dip in the top. But we had no covers and it was making really good compost, but you get no ignition. And the bloke I was talking about, the fellow who sued us, um, he got about a $44,000 government grant as a reward for having no fires in his compost process. So
Nice.
yeah, look, it's got so many applications,
Yeah.
Michael. It almost bewilders me when you think more about. I've been thinking recently about if you've got a dilution rate of 200 to 1 and that's been really successful, what would happen if you put it on at 10 to 1? Could you use it as a noxious, could you overfeed something? I
Yeah.
mean, could you overstimulate something to
Yeah.
the point where you killed it? There
Or
was a very clever farmer here many years ago I saw at a conference. He used to go around to all these thistles and at the peak time, just before they actually
yeah.
started to flower, he'd
Agree.
feed them sugar.
Okay.
He said it worked a treat. They just sort of gluttonously chew all this stuff in, take all that stuff in, and yeah,
Oh,
just
that's
kill them
awesome.
anyway. I don't think we've touched the sides in terms of what we can do, and my whole idea is try to give this stuff to other people and encourage them to use their imagination because some of the biggest tools I keep saying to farmers, the biggest tool you've got is your ability to walk out the back door and look at your paddock and know whether or not you've had a 10% increase in something. Most people can't do that.
Yeah.
So what you need to do is you need to use that observation skill and apply it to this. When I put lab on that cow, does it look better because of my imagination or does it look better because it's fitter? Or like some of the calves I've had in New Zealand that I've taken photographs of, the colours are almost alarming in terms of the deep browns and clear whites and yeah,
Wow.
they just look so healthy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's what we're
Uh,
looking for. Something that's just like us, looking healthy.
yeah, yeah, absolutely.
Do
Yeah.
it. I'm using this product, this two products last year. Squid juice. If you're not familiar with it, I'll send you some information. Um,
Right.
it has the ability to stop Fusarium, but
Right.
it's got chitin in it, chitin B, which really helps. So the farmers in the states were using it with their Y drops and getting disease and insect control. And
Right.
at the same time, I'm using another one called Green Lightning, which is plasma nitrogen. So
Right.
when I put that together with the squid juice, the kelp, my little fulvic, my molasses, and then my Johnson Sioux extract in the lab,
Yeah.
it's a huge synergy of inoculation. And I found last year we had no disease in only one lawn of it, a 2 million square feet. So 30,000 square feet out of 2 million square feet with insect. And that was because they had tents. It was an event area. They had tents on it. They didn't water. They had high compaction. And we do a little extra there. But it wasn't to the point where it was dying off. It was just that you couldn't feel the mass rooting when you were walking. It was very loose, and you could pull it back and you could find a grub. But there wasn't a population where it ate all the roots. And then we didn't have any predators coming after it, meaning that what we have are skunks, possums, and raccoons that would dig up those grubs and look like a rototiller had gone through. If that was the case, I use a fox urine or a coyote urine. I dip a stick, like a Q-tip, in the thing, stick the Q-tip up in the air, and that aroma of the urine, the predator keeps those little buggers away.
Yeah.
It stops them. It doesn't stop the cats, though.
Yeah.
Cats are fearless.
Yeah. It's interesting.
Sorry.
Biodynamics has got some abilities with that too, I think. I've used peppers on different occasions there's one person I've got who's frightened of possums, and being frightened of possums in Australia is like a bit frightened of kangaroos. It's bloody stupid. But anyway, and I think we've cured her backyard of possums, although she keeps insisting that she keeps finding possum shit. I think it's more of imagination than anything else. But look, in any case, Michael, if you just run out of time, just keep making notes of things, because it forces me to think more about. I've got another document on hydrolysates generally that I put together of all the different hydrolysates I've made. Like recently, I just did one with orange juice for a farmer out in Griffith, which is about 5 hours west of here. Oranges have only got a protein level of about 1.3 or something, so it's very low. So I put some fish protein in to push the protein level up, and it processed it. What I'd like to do now, though, is take that product back to him and get him to spray it on four or six trees and just observe whatever it is that might change in that. Yeah. But yeah, I've made hydrolysates out of most extraordinary things.
Well, and then I'm working with a greenhouse with Freesia and Ranunculus. They have a vineyard we're going to be working with. I've been working with other vineyards. Great successes there, as well with peach orchard that I'll be working with this year. We got to try and reduce the amount of chemicals they're spraying in our Niagara region because we're a fruit belt here. We got the plums, the prunes, the apricots. We got everything here, and the grapes for the wine. And as you know, how much they love to spray. It's more of a calendar date. Let's just go out there and put her on. And it's in the atmosphere all the time. It smells in this area from spring to fall.
Shit.
Stangles.com